I want to welcome you all. Thank you for coming to the Adult Forum on this incredibly important topic on anti-racism work and the anti-racism work that has been going on behind the scenes with this wonderful team behind me, and I'm going to obviously let them do their work in sharing with you what they've been doing and their vision and challenge to Montview Church in the days ahead. I am going to open us in prayer with a prayer written by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Would you pray with me? When our eyes do not see the gravity of racial injustice, shake us from our slumber and open our eyes, O Lord. When out of fear we are frozen into inaction, give us a spirit of bravery, O Lord. When we try our best but say the wrong things, give us a spirit of humility, O Lord. When the chaos of this dies down, give us a lasting spirit of solidarity, O Lord. When it becomes easier to point fingers outward, help us to examine our own hearts, O Lord. God of truth, in your wisdom, enlighten us. God of love, in your mercy, forgive us. God of hope, in your kindness, heal us. Creator of all people, in your generosity, guide us. Racism breaks your heart. Break our hearts for what breaks yours, O Lord. Ever-present God, you called us to be in relationship with one another and promised to dwell wherever 2 or 3 are gathered. In our community, we are many different people. We come from many different places, have many different cultures. Open our hearts that we may be bold in finding the riches of inclusion and the treasures of diversity among us. We pray in faith. Amen. I want to introduce to you Diane Briscoe-McKenzie, who will lead us off, and I trust that each member will introduce yourselves as you speak. Yes. And would you please welcome this team?
Good morning. Oh, that's right. I forgot. You can do that when you sing, too. You can take off your mask. I forgot. Well, good morning. As Pastor Clover said, I'm Diane Briscoe-McKenzie. I'm the co-moderator with Leah Newcomer of our Anti-Racism Trust team. Hi. Oh, he's waving to Mom. Yeah. I thought he was waving to me. Okay, so we started, the Anti-Racism Trust team started in the fall of 2020. It started due to all of the things that were going on with the killing of Black people by police, and that some of us got in touch with Clover and with Ian. I think most of us that are on the team expressing our horror of what was going on, and they decided we needed to have a team together, an anti-racism trust team, to discern how we were going to bring anti-racism to Montview Church and become an anti-racist church. So the way that we started was interviewing different people who were specialists in anti-racism, and selected Reverend Siobhan Starling Lewis to guide us in a study of what lies between us, a study book and videos. And then we moved on to our new study that you're going to hear more about, that we hope to share with the whole church body of those that are interested. I just want to give you the definition of anti-racism, because when we did a presentation to the deacons, there were questions about, well, just what is it and what will Montview look like as an anti-racist church? So anti-racism includes beliefs, practices, actions, movements, and policies adopted to develop to oppose racism. And need to point out that it's a focused and sustained job, anti-racism. It's not just one pat, simple answer or a series of answers. It's an ongoing thing throughout our lives of working towards anti-racism. So we're going to show you a video in a little bit that we worked on and give you a little bit more information, which will give you more information about what we've been doing for the past year and a half and where we plan to go in the future. So with that, I'm going to introduce and pass on the mic to Leah and to Lynn on the team.
Thank you, Diane. I'm Leah Oliver, and this has been such a joy and privilege to work with this team over the last almost year and a half. And we've all learned together so much and grown so much, and we are so excited to work together with the rest of our congregation to continue in this very important movement. I wanted to take a minute and introduce our team members who are here with us. You'll see in the video other team members who have been part of our work and who have stepped away, and some who cannot be here today but who are still very actively involved. So maybe when I say your name, if you can just wave. Marjorie Lewis, Lynn Merwin, Susie King, Marilyn Ackerman, Matt McConville, Heidi Shriver. All right, and I think I got everyone who's here with us today. I will turn it over to Lynn to explain our next activity.
Good morning. You should have received an index card and a pen or a series of pens to share. If anybody needs any of these supplies, if you could raise your hand, and maybe we have a volunteer who could grab them out of the box on the front pew here. But I think most of you should have received them by now. We have a little exercise that you can work on over the next 30 to 45 minutes or so while we're providing this program. The idea is to create a little 6-word essay about your thoughts on race and racism in the church. 6 words, very simple. It doesn't have to be a sentence. It can be just 6 random words on race or racism in the church. The idea is for it to be a little bit of thought-provoking, and for us as a team to get a sense of where we are as a church. A little barometer reading of sorts. It should be anonymous, don't put your name on it, and we'll pull these together and kind of get a sense, as I said, of where we are and what we're thinking. Leah is going to provide a few examples. What else? You may have seen this shared in other ways. For example, in the New York Times, there was a version of this on the pandemic last year or the year before. It kind of all runs together in my mind. But take the next 30 minutes or so to share your 6 words on the index card. Thank you. Back to Leah.
Okay, to help you think about what you might want to put on your card, we've talked a lot about how our work on anti-racism here at Montview is different from other efforts. It's sort of a popular or common topic right now to be discussing anti-racism in many of our nonprofit or workplace arenas, but to be discussing it in our church with a faith-based lens is what makes this conversation different. So we as a team have thought about our 6-word essays on the topic of race and racism in the church, and I thought I would just read them to you, and we're eager to read your thoughts as well. So here they are: understanding complicity to inform work. You've got to be carefully taught. Gospel teaches love all. church divides. Christians, remember Jesus, man of color. Make people feel like they matter. We're called to love one another. Privileged, oblivious, white, learning to change. Enlightened by reality, empowered by awareness. Overwhelmed with complicity, hopeful in contingency. Complicity is sinful, confession brings healing. A long journey, hope for change. So hopefully that will get us started. I am very pleased to introduce to you a video. This video has been a collaborative effort from our team. We first started it, came together with the idea of this presentation when we were speaking to our session and to our deacons. It then became clear to us that we wanted to be able to share this with the rest of our congregation and have something that could be passed along. So we have a video version of it that we want to share, and our narrator is one of our team members, and you'll hear him. His name is Chin, and we are sorry he can't be with us, but his voice is powerful, and he is with us in spirit. So with that, can I turn it over to the video?
Thank you for taking time to watch this presentation. We, the members of Montview's Anti-Racism Trust team, are eager to share the lessons of our journey thus far. We would also like to give you a sneak peek of where we are going. The Montview Anti-Racism Trust team is a beloved community, one which values equity and inclusivity. We believe we must start with awareness and listening for the voice of the Spirit in our own hearts before we can step into this work with our congregation. We commit to action to bring forth the scriptural values of seeking justice and loving mercy. We are dedicated to loving our neighbor as ourselves and building deeper relationships within our Montview community. Anti-racism is a belief or practice that recognizes pervasive racism in society and actively combats racial prejudice and discrimination in order to promote racial justice and equity. It is our work as Christians to be advocates. We need to speak out because of the complacency and complicity of the church. According to Christian scholar Dr. Jamar Tisby, compromised Christianity transcends regions. This is why Christians in every part of America have a moral and spiritual obligation to fight the church's complicity with racism wherever it may occur. These are the 14 Montview members that started meeting over Zoom in December of 2020. Back in the spring of 2021, we had the marvelous opportunity to work with skilled facilitator Reverend Siobhan Starling-Lewis. She is currently the pastor of Charlotte's Memorial Presbyterian Church, as well as the co-moderator of the anti-racism ministry team of the Presbytery of Charlotte. She led our team through a book by Dr. Lucretia Carter Berry titled What Lies Between Us? Fostering First Steps Towards Racial Healing. It is a 5-week self-paced educational course in anti-racism. In March of 2021, the anti-racism team was invited to prepare a prayer for a Montview service. This prayer is a collective effort created by the entire team to raise awareness of the pain and trauma caused by racism, to acknowledge our responsibility as Christians to work towards healing and reconciliation, and to ask for the Spirit to guide us in this important work. The prayer is available on the Montview Anti-Racism webpage and will be played in its entirety at the end of this presentation. In June of 2021, we moved into a slightly new membership, still with 14 members, but more strategically involving representation from the Montview deacon, elder, youth, and staff leadership. We spent about 6 weeks that summer delving into Dr. Jamar Tisby's excellent study guide, The Color of Compromise. This New York Times bestseller was recommended by Reverend Starling Lewis. Tisby received his PhD in history at the University of Mississippi, where he studied race, religion, and social movements of the 20th century. His work has been featured in the Washington Post, CNN, and The Atlantic. As noted by a critic, Tisby's style is not to shame or blame, but it is a call to understand the history and to fight for a more racially unified church. We were each provided with a copy of the study guide and a link to the 11 online videos. Each video runs approximately 15 to 20 minutes and it's narrated by Tisby himself. Each session is followed by a study guide with questions for personal and group reflection. There are opportunities for deeper reflection connecting to biblical passages and closing prayers. Our approach was to watch one video at home on our own and reflect with the help of the study guide, focusing on a couple of questions decided on in advance. During our regular meeting, we would learn from the sharing of these reflections. We would watch a second video as a group and follow the same approach of reflecting on a couple of the study prompts.
Our team wanted to read some of the more profound Tisby quotes. Dr. Tisby said, and I read, "Nowadays, all the American church needs to do in terms of compromise is cooperate with already established and racially unequal social systems." This is what he said. And this is what drives me, Marilyn, to work in areas where systemic racism needs to be broken down and changed to allow anyone, no matter the color of their skin, their zip code, or their income, to arrive home safe and alive at night to their loved ones. I work in the criminal justice reform space with Together Colorado and try to live this quote every day.
Good morning, I'm Matt McConville, and I will read 2 more quotes from Dr. Tisby. "The church needs a carpenter from Nazareth to deconstruct the house that racism built and remake it into a house for all nations." I really like that image of a carpenter. And this carpenter doesn't have a new field. He has to deconstruct first, and so do we. The other quote, also from Dr. Tisby, "In case you weren't sure, this is the civil rights movement of our time. It's happening right now. How you are responding in this moment is exactly how you would have responded during the movement of the 50s and 60s.
In the final session, Tisby addresses the what's next and where do we go from here. He shares a simple model for action referred to as the arc of racial justice, ARC being the acronym for awareness, relationships, and commitment. He explains that 1. The church must embrace awareness. We must become lifelong learners on the history of race in our society and the problems that exist around us. Awareness can take the form of books, documentaries, personal study, classes, or even human sources. Awareness is a lifelong act of refusing to grow complacent in the way things are. 2. Relationships expand our horizons and open up new possibilities for understanding and solidarity. While a book or video will help our minds, relationships have the power to touch our hearts. 3. The final step is a commitment to action. We cannot simply learn and experience. A commitment to action can be steps of solidarity in neighborhoods, schools, jobs, and churches, challenging unjust hiring practices or confronting discrimination. Action is not about perfection. Whatever you do, do something. While we can spend untold time trying to understand the problems, we will not see any progress without a commitment to change what we can.
Good morning. I'm happy to share with this, and I'm happy to be able to read the screen because I'm too nervous to read my phone. So, in relation to the takeaways, there were many, many takeaways. These are simply some of them. The historical perspective, putting this in context and just being able to understand how we got here was one of the greatest contributions from the Tisby study. And then the need for the church to take the lead. I'm sure at some point in your growing up, you learned that we are often seen as the salt of the earth, and you know that salt preserves. And so if we as a church are supposed to participate relative to that responsibility, yes, it's urgent that the church do whatever must be done in order to maintain as much of our godliness, our life-giving capacity. And in relation to the importance of the work, there's no denying it. There's no getting around it. As individuals, we are, according to many, a church, and we congregate as a church. Therefore, our individual responsibility and our collective responsibility is key to making anything happen. Our daily perspective changed. As we shared our experiences, we realized that we are very sensitive to just the microaggressions that occur. Just being aware of subtle differences in relation to treatment, that was increased. Our being complicit through our silence as a church and as individuals was very challenging. It didn't matter about the color, as you will hear in relation to our confessions. Jamar Tisby's delivery, no shame, no blame. Shame gets in the way of progress. One thing that we did learn, guilt is fine. Just leave the shame alone. For when we feel guilty, without shame, we're empowered to move ahead. And when we are blaming, we have this air of self-righteousness, which usually puts us in very awkward positions when we need grace. The theological, prophetic, reconciling, reparations, analytical, all of these are terms, and they allow us to gain a better understanding of the church's role and why we should be among the leaders in the anti-racism movement. The hope that we can undo racism. It's our social responsibility. In undoing it, it is important to have a vision, and we know that. This next to the last bullet, there would be no black church without racism in the white church rings very true. If indeed the capacity to optimize one's spirituality were made available to all who attended the, quote, white church, there would be no need. However, it also shares with us the infinity and the eternity of God. And there's no harm in finding a place where one can optimize spirituality. And finally, accessible material and speakers. We are all hungry to learn, and we hope that you will join us in our continued search. Thank you.
The team met for a retreat in November of 2021. In addition to strategic planning work, we discussed grace space guidelines and gained a deeper understanding of the history of Montview. We were encouraged by the presence and exhortation of Tamara Dixon, Chief Diversity Officer of the City of North Glen, and Adrian Miller, Executive Director of the Colorado Council of Churches. All of our plates are so full right now.
Hi, I'm Heidi Shriver. And all of our plates are full. This is not an illusion. They are. This slide references a shift in thinking that I experienced with my colleagues in my school district as we continued our anti-racist professional learning over many years. I specifically remember the meeting that we were talking about starting to integrate our staffs into this learning. And we were all committed. Nobody said this isn't important. But one of us spoke up and said, I don't know how to give this time. Our plates are so full, and it's one more thing on the plate. You have to be honest and safe in spaces like that. And someone else said, we had been studying for a while, and someone else said, I think this is the plate, though. And it changed everything for us. When we began to think of our equity study and our practices as the plate itself, rather than something we were adding to our full plates, we began to see really positive and meaningful change in our relationships with students and families of color, and in our priority for inclusion for all, in this case in education, public education. When we began to use an equity or anti-racist lens to plan and to evaluate all of our initiatives, from curriculum to family engagement to building school community, we found that equity practices were not one more thing to juggle on our plates. They were, in fact, the plate that held the foundation for all those initiatives, you see. From this viewpoint, we held common beliefs and goals about how to focus all of our initiatives on opportunity and inclusion for all, incorporating a range of perspectives. Seeing anti-racist awareness and practice as the plate was transformative for us as individuals and as an organization. And it is our hope that as the wonderful community of Montview Presbyterian Church, we can start to see anti-racist practice as our plate for all of our initiatives.
Montview's program staff has engaged in intense anti-racism study and self-reflection work. Members of the Anti-Racism Trust team has taken it further to understand our history and the complicity of racism within the church and the nation. We are all in unison that this work has to be a priority for Montview as a congregation. So where do we go next in our effort to become an anti-racist church? There is a group of 18 human dignity delegates who have been meeting together since the middle of 2020, studying how to become anti-racist. Together with those in the trust team, we will lead anyone interested, especially those involved in lay leadership of Montview, session and deacons, to participate in the TISB study. After this, we would together decide how we can best move this through the congregation, integrating anti-racism work throughout Montview's each and every ministry. It is crucial to have the support of church leadership so that we can engage in this work together. It's an organic and evolving process, but we believe a starting point is to participate in the study of Jamar Tisby's The Color of Compromise.
Diane will start and I'll follow up. Do you want to start?
Well, I think we were just, it was just announced on the video that we plan to do small groups and be inclusive of anybody and everybody who's interested. Eventually, a schedule will come out of groups of doing this study, and we'll give you more information. I would also encourage you to look at the Montview website and sorry. And it's up there, what you can look at to see the piece that we have on the website and resources. There are plenty of resources. I want to also say, please, if you'd like to talk to any of us, ask questions, which we're going to have a question and answer period in just a minute. Please feel free to do so. We are excited to include the whole church in this study and moving towards becoming an anti-racist church.
So we are in the process of coming up with a template of dates and times to offer to our session, deacons, the choir, and some interested members who have already said that they are hoping to get involved early. And that's forthcoming. We hope to get that study going this spring. We're very excited to announce that Dr. Jamar Tisby will actually be coming to Montview. He will be visiting over the weekend of May 15th through the 17th, and 13th through 15th? 13th through 15th, sorry. So please mark that down. It should be a wonderful weekend of learning together, and if you can, carve out some time in your schedule between now and then to join a group to engage in one of these studies. I don't think you'll regret it. It's a really very wonderful, enlightening, challenging, and powerful experience. So with that, we'd love to have a little bit of a question and answer period, and then we will close with a prayer. All right. Questions? Okay, the question was, will books be available here at Montview, or should members purchase their own books? I think our best answer to that right now is that the first step will be to sign up for a study, and there will be additional information coming out by email and also in the church, the weekly church email about how to sign up for a study. And once that happens, then we'll be in communication with you about how to get the book. Oh, it's actually, to clarify, this is important, there is a book version of The Color of Compromise, and then there is a study guide with a video. They're both wonderful. They both have essentially the same content but different delivery. We will be going through the video study. Okay. Yeah. Okay, and just to quickly summarize what Clover said, if you couldn't hear, the video portion of this study is going to be available. So when you sign up for a study, this will be something that you will be watching and have access to both as a small group and on your own. And Clover is so correct in saying that the best way to learn is to learn together, to have an opportunity to talk and listen and ask questions. And so we really encourage everyone to prayerfully consider getting involved. Any other questions?
I'm wondering, so let's imagine a little bit 2 years from now. So a number of us in the congregation have been through the study and we've taken steps after that, and we don't know where it'll lead. But I think it would, you could ask Clover and I to do this too, but I want to ask the team, and we can do this together. Let's imagine a little bit, how might Montview look differently or be different? Because some of the things are hard to see, but they're there. We could name those. But I'm just curious if we could imagine a little bit how we might look differently in 2 years from now.
The deacons asked that question when Lynn and I did a presentation to the deacons. And I didn't have any time to really think about it. And I said, when I hear the word look, what does Montview look? What is it going to look like as an anti-racist church? I think generally the perception of people is that that means that we're going to be a multi-ethnic church and there will be more people of color in the pews. That's not necessarily an anti-racist church. You can be a totally white church and still be an anti-racist church. And the way we become anti-racist is to do the study, to continue to study, to become aware, the ARC, to build relationships and to have a commitment, because this is not an overnight 1 year, 2 year thing. This is an ongoing thing as long as racism exists in this country, in this world. So it's an ongoing thing. Things that you can do, because people often say, I want action, I want to do something. Things you can do, as I said, is to study, support black businesses and businesses of other people of color. Those are things you can do. Make sure that you are aware and study what's going on with our legislators. Whenever there's any kind of laws or legislation concerning equality and equity, study up on it. Be sure you vote. Please be sure you vote. And you can sign up and help with voter registration. You can be a commissioner, whatever. We need to get involved, not just in the inside of this church, but outside of the doors of this church. And that means being involved in the community. The other thing you can do when you hear something that you know is not, or you believe is racist, say something. Don't let it pass by. Say something, stand up. Stand up for people of color. We need you. We need you to be our allies. There's plenty more, but it will give you more as we keep going along. And if you have ideas, please tell us too. We're open.
Anyone else have anything to add to that?
There's some immediacy of trying to deal with this, with some of the one lady who was speaking about within the schools, the critical race theory and the thought of sort of eliminating the racism that's been in the past, and equal, different points of view on whether it's Black history, the Holocaust, different issues connected with that. I think to really, as maybe representing Montview as a church that through our small groups or something, to be able to really say we're moving in a wrong direction if we go down this path. And so I think it's something 2 years from now to say, it probably is something that needs to be really dealt with fairly aggressively to really take a stand on it, and so that it's not something that slowly is eroding, which we've certainly seen in politics recently. So anyways.
I thought I'd just take a moment to respond to that. I think it does require immediacy. And I think in our team, we definitely had that immediate feeling of we need action. And we still have that feeling. That's very essential. But I think what Siobhan Starling Lewis helped us really, really look at and Dr. Tisby also encouraged us to consider carefully is the fact that the work starts with us. So this is this is heart work first. It's work that we need to do in our own congregation. It's not work that we go out and fix somebody else first. It's our work. And so we as a congregation need to wholeheartedly be open to soul searching and talking with each other and hearing each other and asking those hard questions and reframing things and learning history we haven't learned before or unlearning history and going through a process that we haven't necessarily had an opportunity to have before. So there's some homework that we need to do in this department. I would say we've kind of come to that conclusion together. So much to do ahead, for sure. Anyone else?
What's your best counsel for us when we are with someone who's articulating really racist rhetoric? That's question one. And the second one is like it. What's your best counsel to us when we sense those racist things coming up in our own hearts?
That's a really good question. Does anyone want to start?
I'll start as a behaviorist.
There you
person. As a behavioralist, first of all, if it comes up in you, own it. See, that's one of the biggest issues. When it comes up, we don't want to own it. And it's about any intolerance. Own it first, then forgive yourself. You see, those are the two things that get in the way of doing something about it. Remember, no shame, no shame. And then, we all have loved ones. It doesn't matter what the race is. We all have loved ones that are racial bigots. And the beauty is, or the universal piece is, we all can be racial bigots. It's just that all of us can't be racists. So when you hear bigotry, regardless of the source, you learn to just naturally not support it. You see, a lot of times we want to force someone to change when the key is to allow them to emerge into changing. And a simple facial expression or a lack of response goes a very, very long way. You see, so there are, many things that can be done, and I think that your question sort of informs some of the things that we will be exploring as a church, you see. But the key is, don't be ashamed of it. Just own it, and then forgive yourself. You'd be amazed at how far that will go.
Specifically, Pete, working with my human dignity delegates for the last 2 years and working with Together Colorado, even those of us who think we're woke and very aware in the awareness arc, we say things that are mistakes and we hurt feelings of our friends of color. And what I have found in the trainings that I've been through is to ask a question, especially if you're talking to someone you love, not a stranger. Marjorie has good advice for the facial expression and the silence for that. But when you're with one of your church friends or your family members, why do you feel that way? Tell me more about what brings you to that conclusion. And it's amazing how it stops the person to make them think about why they think the way they think. You don't have to even respond to that, but just let them say it out loud. And sometimes when they say it out loud, they don't like what they heard, and they might modify it. They might not. White supremacists run in all of our families, and they are dug in sometimes. And as one of my black trainers taught me, some pancakes can't be flipped. And so don't even try. So there's my short answer.
Any other questions? Are we ready for our prayer? Okay. I think we will be closing with a version of our prayer of lamentation that we shared with our congregation last spring. But we've had some change over the last year, and we've decided to edit it just a little bit. And if you go to the website and look at this video, you'll see a recording of our presentation last year, but right now we're going to give you one in person that's a little bit different. And we have contributions from our members who are not present either. So we will be kind of popping in and out with our parts of the prayer. And I want to first, before we start, invite you to take a moment to breathe deeply and center yourself and open your hearts for these words. Okay. There is much to lament about our history as a nation and as a church in regard to the sin of racism. Lament is a way of praying during which a person or community cries out to God and expresses deep pain. We have come a long way, but there is still much to be done. Yet, in the spirit of lament, we hold firmly to the belief that God is in our midst and that there is no pain, no hurt, no injustice so deep that God is not deeper. As members of Montview's Anti-Racism Trust Team, we will share this updated version of the Prayer of Lament. These are our personal lamentations and confessions, but we acknowledge that we are one body in Christ.
We lament that as a people of God, we often fail to truly internalize and follow the teachings of Christ to love one another.
We lament the lives lost, families broken, and communities hurt by the impact of systemic racism.
I lament that I did not see the institutional racism that is pervasive throughout our country, and that we still have quite a journey ahead of us, especially given the polarized times we live in today, where so many fight the effort even to teach the truth of our history.
We lament that we do not acknowledge white privilege and all it so easily gives to white people, and all it so painfully takes away from those of color.
I must have the courage to leave the table and stand up and speak up for any person, regardless of color, when respect for that person is no longer being served. We lament that our sisters and brothers of color continue to bear witness to systemic racism. We confess to being asleep to the unchristian ways of our white community for hundreds of years.
I lament that I was so long blind to my privilege and to all the benefit that I've received because of my whiteness. I confess that even as I was learning of my privilege, I sometimes chose silence, not realizing that this choice diminished my commitment to my faith.
We confess that far too often we rush toward racial reconciliation before taking the time to understand the fullness of the injury and the depth of the wound, avoiding our discomfort and afraid to dwell in the pain that is life in community together.
We confess that our hearts and minds have been closed for too long. We have failed to celebrate our similarities and differences. I join the wailing sisters and mourning brothers to rend our garments of privilege and ease, to sit in the sackcloth and ashes of the nation's original sin.
We confess that we live in a society more attuned to consumerism than ideology, one in which we question more than we believe.
We confess that while our family ancestry may or may not have been slaveholders, all white people have greatly benefited from the inherited wealth that was a product of our slave economy unto this day.
We confess that we have internalized degrading stereotypes promoted by racism and sexism to the extent that we have dwarfed our capacity to effectively grow into the grace of God, thus dwarfing our call to excellence in the name of Christ. We confess this reality without the crippling shame that would prevent our spiritual growth. Instead, our confession serves as an inspired awareness and insight that thrusts us further into the image and likeness of God without compromising said greatness, always evolving within.
We invite you to take a moment to offer your own prayer of lament or confession. Amen. Thank you all for being here, and we'd love to have your index cards. If you can maybe leave them, we can either collect or leave them on the front pew, and we'd love to look at them together. And thanks again for being with us this morning.